American and the world steel industry both went into decline in the 1970s. Demand for steel just leveled off, and Bethlehem had a lot of old plants. They had very high costs. They weren't making the kinds of products that were very popular, and so the Bethlehem Steel Company found itself in a lot of trouble in the 1980s. And this plant here was really not a good place to have a steel mill in the 20th century. It was totally uneconomic. So in 1995, the Bethlehem Steel Company decided to stop making iron and steel in the Bethlehem facility. But because they had been so important to the community for all these years, over 100 years, the steel company kind of felt a little embarrassed, maybe guilty about letting Bethlehem down. So what they did is they came up with an idea to redevelop the site as a thing they were going to call Bethworks. And it was supposed to maybe have a hotel and convention center, a swimming area, family fun centers. At one point, they even talked to the Disney people about maybe bringing in some kind of amusement park onto the facility. And that one of the major draws for this facility was going to be a National Museum of Industrial History, which would display not only the history of Bethlehem Steel, but also a lot of artifacts from the Smithsonian. Well, after Bethlehem Steel went bankrupt, the plans for Bethworks kind of fell apart. The National Museum of Industrial History had a lot of trouble raising money. They were going to need an enormous amount of money to build the museum that they would have liked to have built. And then the Sands Corporation of Las Vegas, Nevada expressed interest in building a casino on the site, and the local politicians and everybody, thinking that this would bring a lot of money and jobs and tax revenue into Bethlehem, really were very excited about it and welcomed the Sands pretty much into Bethlehem to build their casino. You know, there's some nice restaurants in the Sands, and I know people like to go and eat at the restaurants. They did build an outlet mall connected to the Sands. When the casino was first proposed, there was some concern about what the casino might do to Bethlehem, that it might increase crime, increase traffic, and though actually I don't think that the casino has had a great impact on everyday life in the city. It's far off on the east end of the city. It really, I think people's fears might have been a little overstated. And after the Bethlehem Steel Company went bankrupt, and it was unclear what we were going to do with all that land down there, Jeff Parks had an idea of building I don't know what you call it, music and arts facility in the heart of the old steel mill. And the one place he wanted to put it was really in the most dramatic spot, which is right next to the very tall 200-foot high blast furnaces. And through a combination of public and private funding, the steel stacks facility was built. People like steel stacks, and they like to go to movies and concerts there. But I think most people are unhappy with the fact that there has really been no real preservation or reuse of any of the old Bethlehem Steel buildings. A number of buildings have been knocked down, and there really aren't very concrete plans to actually use the old buildings. And I think that's the one area I think people are disappointed, and they would like to see something done to preserve at least parts of the steel mill, and particularly some of the more important buildings on the property. If you go down there, a couple of the stone remnants of buildings were in trouble of collapsing, and they sprayed concrete on them. The giant machine shop too, the one third mile long building, that where they used to make battleship guns is in terrible shape. We are being told now that they're going to bring in a Bass Pro Shops, which is going to somehow be put into the old machine shop number 2. But I have not seen any plans on how that's actually going to work. Steel Stacks, I like to go to movies there, and I've been to a number of, they bring in some really good concerts. So it's a nice community center.